With the release of Clancy coming about 3 days before the time I'm recording this, I thought I would do a review of it, but I felt like doing something bigger, and what's better than a full discography ranking? This video won't include any of the EPs, but does include all 7 studio albums. And yes, that means the regional at best fans can be satisfied. All 7 of you. I will say that I feel like I've got a pretty unique perspective where I feel like I'm a fan, yet ended up being pretty lukewarm on 21 Pilots as a whole. I've got one 2 out of 10, a 3 out of 10, a 5, a 6, 2 7s, and a 9. And yet I was super excited for Clancy and what it would mean for the duo. And even just revisiting the projects, it was interesting to see where my favourites ended up lying. My first place and last place choices are pretty predictable, but it's basically a free-for-all in between, and I was surprised to see where I differed from the fanbase as a whole. And, of course, what about Clancy? Did it live up to my expectations? Well, time to find out.
Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O.
Due to the weird timing of the release amongst the forming of a record deal with Fueled by Ramen, Regional at Best doesn't, legally exist. And that's probably the best way to treat Regional at Best. Like it doesn't exist. Regional at Best is split between songs that got repackaged and put into 21 Pilots' first LP released under a label, Vessel, and songs that are just not anywhere on streaming. There's really not a lot to say about the songs that would be on Vessel. The Vessel versions are just better, and, I'm gonna go listen to the good version of Trees instead. The other, non-streaming tracks are better, but only slightly. There are occasional bright, emotional moments like Forest or Kitchen Sink, but Regional at Best actually made me rewrite my entire Vessel script because of how dated it sounds. Seriously, take the autotune from Lonely and put it in any year that isn't between 2010 and 2012, and you will be laughed out of the music industry. I know a lot of 21 Pilots fans would be praying for this to come back to streaming, and I guess it would be cool if it did, but I sure as hell wouldn't be returning to it.
I am the glop glow gab galab, the schwabble double wobble gabble flibber blubber.
Fairly Local is one of the worst pop songs of all time. The most I ever really get from this project is a sense of irony from the way they were like, oh, the top 40 sucks. We hate them. We're gonna make real music instead. And then Stressed Out became one of the biggest hits of the decade. And also, the album could not be more mainstream if it tried. Have you heard Hometown? Better question. Do you remember Hometown? It's not like I even really hate it, but there's no way you can hold this opinion about the mainstream while making the most background music imaginable. And that's about all I have to say about most of the stuff here, really. I said Hometown, but I could have used Stressed Out, Ride, Laneboy, Doubt, or Polarize as an example, and it wouldn't have made a difference. I don't have an issue with basic pop music, as you'll see later, but when the band was clearly under the impression that they were making something so much more than that, with lyrics that are just pretty bad, it makes for a really unpleasant listening experience. Blurryface isn't totally awful though. I really like the breakneck speed and chorus melodies on the opening track, and I actually kind of like the ukulele on The Judge too. Also, this does have one shining light banger of a track, which is We Don't Believe What's on TV. It's a super fun song with awesome vocal runs and guitar lines, and I think it's single-handedly proof that Blurryface was just bad execution and not necessarily a bad concept. Still, overall, this is a pretty low point in their discography in my opinion, and it's a shame that their biggest album is also probably one of their worst.
A vessel has been detected. Unimatrix 4.
This one hurts. This is the one that hurts the most. Because I feel like in another life, I could have really loved it. The highlights are so good. But overall, Vessel has easily aged the worst out of any 21 Pilots project, at least still on streaming. And in that sense, I kind of understand why fans might like this a lot more than I do, since if this didn't feel so pristinely 2013, I might be way more into it. The tracks here are better than their regional at best counterparts, for sure. Trees especially goes from an actual disaster to a true standout on the album. Honestly, the Vessel version of Trees might be one of my favourite things they've ever done. And say what you will about the rest of the album, and I will, and it's definitely a mixed bag, but even at their best, I don't know if they've ever made something as cathartic and uplifting as Trees. I also adore the remakes of Holding On To You and Guns for Hands. Tyler Joseph's lyricism between Regional at Best and Blurryface is like infamously juvenile. But the writing on Guns for Hands always just clicked for me. The super simple metaphor for suicidal thoughts is effective, and the way Tyler Joseph speaks on it is really compassionate, which makes me love this as well as tracks they'd make later down the line, like Neon Gravestones. But for every track I like here, there are head scratches still. Everything I love about the chaos and momentum of Holding On To You is also what I hate about Ode to Sleep, since that song's a fucking mess. And Tyler's vocals aren't incredibly consistent either. His performance on Blurryface is shockingly pretty good, despite the everything else about the album. But yeah, here the tender and slower moments just do not work, and it leaves moments like House of Gold and The Run and Go feeling really, really out of place. And more than anything, it just feels robotic, inhuman. More than any other 21 Pilots album, Vessel borrows heavily from EDM. And while it is occasionally pulled off really well, like it is on Trees, you have to sit through an album of Fake You Outs and car radios to get to that point. While Vessel is far from the worst thing they've ever released, and it has some of their best material ever on it, I don't think it's a brilliant overall project, and definitely one of the band's weaker efforts, in my eyes.
A bracing blast of winter is sweeping a broad swath from the American Midwest to the New England.
You know, for an album that's considered one of their worst, and is even explained in-universe as being sanitized mainstream entertainment created while the main protagonist was under the control of the tyrannical powers that be, Scaled Nicey isn't that bad. Dare I say it's even kind of good? Don't get me wrong, it's not great, and nowhere near the band's best. But, I don't know. Sanitized entertainment is good sometimes, I guess. Guess that shows what kind of character I'd be in Dima, since a lot of other people treated this as an affront to God coming right after Trench. I mean, I kind of knew I was going to be more into this than some other people right from the singles being released, since I liked tracks like Shy Away and Choker immediately, and only enjoyed them more once the album actually came out. They're just cute pop songs that Scaled Nicey is really full of, and I kind of like how simple they are. And it does still have those moments that I can't really connect to, obviously. You can't fully drag me in with just sanitized pop songs, and I think some of the super happy and upbeat moments like Good Day and Mulberry Street are just a little clearly too fake, even for me. Also, I will never for the life of me understand No Chance's hype. It's just a weird, Blurryface Trench crossover with the most jarring track placement ever and one of Tyler Joseph's worst rapping performances in a while. But overall, Scaled Nicey is totally okay. Not the best, but it also wasn't trying to be, and that intention makes Scaled Nicey's slight immaturity and cheeriness come off way better than those moments on Blurryface and Vessel. Also, I will never forgive you all for the Bounce Man slander. You will all feel my wrath.
Guys, that's how you hail a cab in New York. Get way out there in the street. He got his arm out.
Okay, hear me out. I know the mixing on this is really rough. I know Tyler Joseph's singing on this album is not great. And I know it's so incredibly tonally inconsistent. But I genuinely really enjoyed the 21 Pilots self-titled. Despite all of the issues, their debut project feels so creatively lush in a way that none of their subsequent projects have managed to be. Overall, I had a decent time listening to their whole discography, and this is definitely not their strongest outing, but even so, it's something I managed to take a lot of joy from. I think what it is that it's just got such a wide array of genre influences that even if certain songs fall flat, you can't help but respect the creativity to go from indie-tronica to pop rock to piano rock to rap to singer-songwriter. And the stories told are all honestly really good. Like, I don't love all these tracks sonically, but tune in to, like, Addict with a Pen, Friend Please, March to the Sea, Aircatcher, or, like, Taxi Cab. And I think you'll find something worthwhile since the songwriting is comfortably the best out of their first 4 projects. I probably am going overboard with the praise because of how much it surprised me, but there are definitely things holding it back from being a project I, like, fully love. Tyler's vocals on this are super rough, and it's not something I mind as long as it fits the mood, like on Friend Please or Fall Away. But equally, Implicit Demand for Proof, and especially Addict with a Pen, just become borderline, like, unlistenable. And it probably does overstay its welcome a little as well. At just over an hour long, it's comfortably their longest project, and it definitely starts to drag a little towards the end. Still, the self-titled surprised me. It's creative, it's emotional, it's decently written, and overall just something I had a really good time with.
Snap back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. Oh, there goes gravity. Choke.
Clancy is kind of a disappointment. It's also like their second best album. For all my complaints about Blurryface and Scaled and Icy, 21 Pilots have always been remarkably good at world building. And, you know, whether or not you buy the excuse, oh, don't worry guys, Scaled and Icy was supposed to be bad. Like, it's a big ask, starting your new album cycle with the phrase, welcome back to Trench. What, a return to the band's best era? That's not a spoiler, you all knew what number 1 was going to be. And I honestly don't know whether it feels like a grand enough conclusion for me. On first listen, I couldn't help but think, that's it? That's the final conclusion to this decade-long story? It's just like a pop album with some vaguely indie rock leaning slants and a few left turns, and like, that's cool, I guess. But being worthy of the hype and being a good album are two different things, and while Clancy is not the former, it's definitely the latter. That indie rock slant is just something that I didn't see coming, but that I really appreciate. Sure, they've had like individual moments in that lane, like Jumpsuit or like Formidable off of Scaled and Icy, I guess. Clancy just takes it one step further, and tracks like Next Semester, Midwest Indigo, and Navigating are a really fun and pretty essential addition to the catalogue, I think. 21 Pilots have, for sure, made some hot garbage, but they've also got it in them to make some super catchy pop, and more often than not, Clancy is fun and heartfelt, and while my expectations going in were probably a little higher than warranted, it's still a cool-ass album with some of the best tracks they've ever made.
Something about the First World War, and you can be pretty sure that it won't be long before trenches get mentioned.
Emergency! Hot take alert. This person likes Trench by 21 Pilots. Nobody's ever said something this brave before. I think Nico and the Niners as kind of a goofy instrumental, and Cut My Lip takes a little too long to branch out, and that's it. Those are my complaints with this album. Trench is otherwise an impossibly good project, coming out of the mind of behind such masterworks as Heathens, Laneboy, and Car Radio. Bro went from, I wasn't raised in the hood, but I know a thing or two about pain and darkness, to, they say, how could he go if he's got everything? I'll mourn for a kid, but won't cry for a king. The jump in production quality is so stark as well that you kind of have to wonder what the hell they were doing beforehand. And I'll continue to express my love for Trees because it kicks ass, but I also feel that same way about half the songs on Trench. I heard the second half of Bandito and thought I could probably climb every mountain in the Himalayas by dinner time. Levitate makes me want to learn parkour. Chlorine makes me want to indulge in various illicit substances, which I get is kind of not the point of that song, but the vibes are immaculate. And Trench really is just a breath of fresh air amongst the 21 Pilots catalogue. And obviously there are other albums I like, and individual tracks I love, but Trench remains the only project I regularly return to. It is a near flawless pop album full of life and surprisingly thought-provoking lyricism. And while I'd love to just talk about it endlessly here, I also kind of want to just finish writing this segment and go listen to it again. It's been a hard road to get here, but returning to their best project made this 21 Pilots deep dive all worth it. Trench is a pop masterpiece and gets the praise it deserves, but throughout the rest of the 21 Pilots discography, I think there's gems to be found everywhere that isn't regional at best. On the screen now are my definitive top 5 21 Pilots tracks of all time, which I still haven't actually figured out while I'm saying the words coming out of my mouth right now. There'll also be a playlist in the description linking to every track here that I listed as a standout, hopefully serving as like a good introduction point if you're not sure where to start with the band. And other than that, thank you for watching. Hopefully you understand where I'm coming from with most of these takes. I'm not sure how well it was articulated, but I think I'm happy with how this video came out. Let me know what other video ideas I should do in the future, and I'll see you all in the next one.
I'm navigating